Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Don't know if you've heard, but Billy Porter has split up with his zaddy. After 6 years of wedded bliss, he would say, but in reality it was no doubt 6 years of shrieking fraud. According to CNN, the two got married only 2 weeks after they met. Well, there's a relationship carved in steel. Judging by the pictures, we can see who wore the pants in the family. Now, of course, because at least one of the parties is white, the white media is not going to be trashing them, at least not as a group, or applying some sort of cultural failing to their divorce. At least not for the white spouse, though we have to wonder if and when they'll get around to going in on Billy Porter, or otherwise dragging him, because it has to happen sooner or later. And what did Billy Porter get out of all this? It wasn't like he was some sort of power couple with his zaddy, and he didn't become any sort of LGBT icon either. Of course, Billy Porter wasn't being lauded by the white media or any special interest groups as being a sterling example of marriage equality because there's nothing stable about Billy Porter at all. This guy has no traits that anybody considers to be admirable, much less desirable. Hell, most of you didn't even know that he had even been married. Because, of course, that was all overshadowed by his asinine antics. He's always performing for the amusement of white audiences. Well, at least one of those audience members gave him thumbs down, and he can't even say anything about it. I have to wonder if his now ex-spouse will eventually start doing tell-alls trashing Billy Porter, no doubt hitting him up for alimony. It would hardly be a surprise if that occurred. This is the result of living on your knees, and we see so many examples of it. Omarosa got kicked out of the Trump White House, and she tried to become one of the administration's angriest critics. She tried to parlay those temporary headlines that she got for criticizing Trump into some sort of regular paying gig, but she doesn't know enough about politics to speak intelligently on the subject. And other than being the sassy black girl who always wants to give everybody a piece of her mind, she has no other real qualities that anybody would consider to be marketable. And being angry at white people, the white media is not going to pay you money to take other white people to task. They're not going to do that. After decades of shameless butt-kissing and trashing the black community, Don Lemonade got thrown out of CNN, and predictably they did it with a lie about him being sexist against women. That was meant to damage his marketability should he try to go elsewhere. In fact, I've seen a few of these would-be black conservative mouthpieces on places like YouTube who have begun to try to change their tune. I guess whatever Fox News or right-wing think tank job they thought they were going to get didn't materialize, so they're trying to pivot. Roly-poly did all that butt-kissing for the Democrats just to get ignored by the Biden White House. Hood rats will throw away their lives and their children's futures just to get a governmental check. What do all of these and many other examples have in common? They've all chosen to live their lives on their knees. And there's many ways this can happen, but the main three are black people who are cowardly and deliberately refuse to confront white power on any level, even if only rhetorically. Second kind are black people who try to get some crumbs from white power's table, and every black person knows the fastest way to do it is by attacking black society. And the final ones are the Negroes who choose to be the sexual playthings for this or that white supremacist. When you beg for crumbs from massa's table, that's living life on your knees. When you beg white power not to hurt you, that's living life on your knees. When you're trying to finesse yourself an upgrade from white power by bending over and giving evil an opening, that's living life on your knees. Now, one of the things we need to be reminded of is that nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. Dr. King understood that. That's why he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. White supremacy definitely understands that principle. That's why they can't afford to have any bastions of true black empowerment take root anywhere on the planet, because the fact that something of that nature could even exist would be an existential crisis for white supremacy. So we see puppet governments in Africa and the Caribbean, and bootlicking political prostitutes in the U.S. who white power found, chose, cherry-picked, propped up, and selected to do their dirty work. And there is no dirtier work in human history than the oppression and degradation of the black man and black woman here in the U.S. To pull off a crime isn't easy. Pulling off a significant crime is even harder. But to pull off a difficult crime, 95% of the time you have to have an inside man. The harder the target, the better protected it is. So how do you penetrate your target's defenses? Answer, you don't. You compromise it from within. You find someone on the inside who's willing to let you past all those defenses, and in return you give them a cut of the loot. They'll get a small taste, a few crumbs. but at least they'll get something. Though if they get a little bit too full of themselves, a little bit too mouthy, and start to think that they deserve more, then you just might have to dispose of them. In fact, it's best to go ahead and do it anyway, so you don't really have to share anything with them. We see this most visibly with black people in the world of entertainment. After white power gives them that first little old check, or that first starring role, they start to think of themselves as hot stuff and begin making demands as if they were a white celebrity. Now, when that happens, the white media retaliates by labeling the black person as difficult or ungrateful if they're a black athlete, and of course athletics is part of entertainment. Then we see them get replaced like Terrence Howard, John Amos, or Janet Hubert. White power only believes in empowering itself. It doesn't believe in empowering its flunkies, puppets, or tools. It believes in using them and eliminating them. This is an expression of philosophy on white power's part. When it shows total contempt even for those who helped it, in the minds of the white supremacists, they're showing ideological strength. Now, you can see that as a betrayal if you want, but let's be honest. All someone has to do is merely look at how white power treats everyone it's ever met. They do it to everyone. But they also push a very seductive lie, too. They show everyone that you can have money and power, meaning you can boss around other black people, because they sure won't let you even boss around the lowliest white person. And for a lot of Negroes, this will work. And then they'll start feeling themselves and saying that they're so smart, there ain't no white supremacy, black folks just don't know how to play the game, etc., sounding like Stephen Smith did, figuring that they're geniuses somehow. And then inevitably these white supremacists get tired of pretending they ever wanted the puppet around, and they get tossed out with the trash. And they do it in a way as to make sure that that person is unemployable or unusable to anyone else. The game, as it were, always ends the same way. But these brilliant bootlicks, who are just so much more savvy than everyone else, always fall for the exact same scam. Because they're so smart. Money cannot buy respect, and it can't buy dignity either. That little old money that this or that white media company or white think tank gives to them can't wash off the stink of having been some white supremacist bedbuck or bedwench, and it can't change the cowardly failure that everyone recognizes them to be. And I know there's some bottom feeders and bottom feeder adjacents who have done their fair share of living on their knees, who might be lurking around these videos. And rather than being ashamed of having been brought that low and resolving to never do it again, instead they'll just make excuses for the Billy Porters and the Don Lemonades and the Omarosas and others. They just want to feel better about having bowed before evil, and they want the rest of us to play along with it. Well, we won't. As black society, we don't give ourselves anywhere near as much credit as we should, and that's because too many of us spend too much time listening to the white media. See, we have a lot more honor and integrity than we give ourselves credit for. It says a lot about the collective integrity and character of the black community that we all know the fastest way to get into white power's quote-unquote good graces is to be a bootlick, and yet the majority of us don't even try to do it. Even though we know that in a very superficial and temporary way we could have a somewhat easier time of it, we still don't go for it. We know that it's hard to fight white power's economic monopoly. It's hard to fend off white power's endless attacks. We all know that we could get them to let up on us a little bit if we just would bow our heads to them and bend the knee, or rather bend over. We know it. But we refuse to do it, and we've refused to do it for hundreds of years. Our ability to respect ourselves and to know we didn't give in to white power says that we have not lost our souls, and we haven't lost our courage either. Some of us act like they've lost their minds, though. We don't need anyone trying to be the best little bootlick they can be. The problem with living on your knees is that you have to decide to make your own fate directly linked to the person who put you on your knees in the first place. You have to enter into a devil's bargain with yourself that you will never choose to act in your own self-interest. And that means when white power falls, you fall right along with it. You haven't set anything up to take the place of your would-be benefactor. When you live on your knees, that also puts you in the perfect position for white supremacy to kick you in the face. Now, if you don't mind having some white supremacist footprints on your mug, then be my guest. But let's be honest. Bootlicks know full well they have to take abuse. And they don't like it. They want to pretend that choosing to live on their knees means that they shouldn't have to be kicked around. But that's exactly what happens. And when this inevitably occurs a few too many times, when the bootlick realizes that Massa's tired of looking at them, then all of a sudden they start trying to talk black. Like Don Lemonade when CNN gave him the heave-ho, and I mean ho, because he prostituted himself to white power every chance he got. Then when he got his walking papers, he started trying to sound, I'm going to talk like a black man now. He sounded awkward and ridiculous as hell. I mean, after decades of letting that little forked tongue of his lick white supremacy's behind, even trying to talk like he had some sort of black identity, it just sounded so fake coming from him, because it was fake. They smeared him with a lie. He attempted to take shots at them with the truth. And while he was accurate, at least in that one statement, he was also about 20 years too late. And mark my words, before it's all said and done, Billy Porter will be doing the same thing, because that's the bootlick's fallback. That's their last ditch. That's where they always wind up. When Massa has used, abused, and is through with them, they basically throw a tantrum by saying, "Wah, Zaddy is a racist." Again, we're not going to wait around for these fools to get the memo, though we do keep in mind that they're not to be trusted. Doesn't matter how much whining and crying they do later on. We're not going to have any sympathy for people who knew better when they did it. And as for Billy Porter, well, if that Pine Sol lady ever gets tired of doing her ooh lordy routine, at least they know who they can replace her with. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Black Voltron Reloaded, Samora Morris, Rebellious Zoe, Charlie, and Frederica Moore. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.